Hey everybody, it's Matthew Street. Welcome to my channel. As always, so happy you're here. And folks, yep, I'm making another Beatles video, folks. I was driving around at work today, listening to some music, and I don't know what put the bug in my head to do this, but I listened to this album that I'm going to speak about today from start to finish, and something struck me, folks, and I really fell in love with this album. Now you might be saying, Matt, you never loved this album? No, of course I did. I love this album. But I've kind of ignored this album. I've kind of neglected it. Like some people, I've kind of given it some shade from time to time, not ranking it as high as I should on, best of Beatles list and stuff. And I was trying to figure out today why that is. So I wrote some notes down and I'm going to go over it with you. But I said to myself at first, why don't you love this album? Why haven't you been waving the banner or waving the flag for this album since day one? Because there's two U.S. albums that this album was the foundation for. And I'm talking about Beatles 65 and Beatles 6. And I love those two albums. I grew up with those albums. I mean, I could never get enough of them. And yet, for some reason, I revered those U.S. albums, but this one, Beatles 65, I never gave a lot of love to, folks. I never really did. I would always rank it near the bottom of a list, or I wouldn't put it on as much as I would put on Beatles 65 or Beatles 6. And it took me a long time to finally realize that this could be the work of pure genius, in my opinion, nowadays, folks. Let me explain and talk about it a little bit. Now, it was released on December 4th, 1964, obviously number one smash album, sold a gazillion copies all over the world. It's such a well-received album and well-respected nowadays, folks. But by many Beatle fans over the years, it has also taken a few hits here and there. Now, what I love about it, what's really helped me grow to this album is not only the music inside, which we're going to speak about, but some other factors, and I wrote some notes. The minimalist cover. There's not a lot going on this front cover. You have very small, minuscule printed words. You can barely see Beatles For Sale. And you got, whether it's stereo or mono, is over here, but very small, you just take a little bit away here. It's a very minimalist cover, very festive in nature, the way it looks. It kind of with the, reddish orange and green, and the way the Beatles are dressed, and the browns up here, the earth tones. It's got that autumn going into winter look to it. So it has a vibe. It has a feeling to it. It sets the mood. It sets the tone, the expressions on their faces. That time of year, the autumn of our years, the winter of our lives, that more somber, down type, not as upbeat type packaging. So right away, you get that vibe from it. And I think that's a very artsy and I don't know if it was done intentionally by Robert Freeman and the Beatles, but whatever the impetus was for this, it's had the lasting effect. This is a very moody and mood-setting type cover. And of course, on the back, no writing at all. And there's the Beatles, again, at Hyde Park with Robert Freeman. Very mood-setting, very atmospheric, if you want to put it that way. All right. So let me start with that right away. Very striking looking. The cover art, in my opinion, is just so beautiful. It's one of the best covers in the Beatles canon, in my opinion. It also has something very unique. It has what's very rare at the time, a gatefold. So it's an album, maybe even one of the first pop albums with a gatefold, with beautiful information and liner notes inside, a great picture from the Washington Coliseum concert. You have this awesome, awesome image right here, which kind of harkens back to a Sergeant Pepper style, like pointing to the way to what Sergeant Pepper might be years to come, 3 or 4 years down the road, okay? 3 years down the road. So, kind of pointing in that direction, which I think is very, very cool. Great, great package overall. I absolutely love it. Now, The Hard Day's Night album was very upbeat, very joyous, very, a lot of love songs, every track written by Lennon and McCartney. This one, you're going in a whole different direction. There's lots of cover songs on here, whereas Hard Day's Night were all originals. This one has 14 tracks, 8 are Lennon and McCartney, and 6 cover songs. And the 6 cover songs are from like some rock and roll pioneer luminaries. You're talking Little Richard, Buddy Holly, Carl Perkins, those kind of people are the cover tracks on here. Absolutely fabulous. All right. Now, again, as I said, not as upbeat as A Hard Day's Night, but like that line in A Hard Day's Night, when the George scene, could this have been an early clue to the new direction? Think about it, folks. And I think about this stuff when I'm driving around in my car. Like I said, the darker moods. It's more introspective, what they're singing about, and the presentation here is more introspective. And I think the cover reflects that introspection. It's just not a lovey-dovey album. It's just one of those albums that it's not all peace and love, baby. I think there's only a few songs on here that really refer to love in a really positive nature. Only a couple of few. Most of the others are not. They don't point in that lovey-dovey direction. They're more rock and roll and more, like I said, more introspective and darker. All right? And they do rock on the originals and the covers, and they make those covers their own, which I love about the covers on this album. This album is a rocker. It rolls. It has ear candy on it. It's very infectious. It has the big beat sound, yet there's somewhat of a cynicism on this album, a little bit cynical. And like I said, I always now look at this album as something that, before Help, before Rubber Soul, that this is the one that is kind of starting with the little hints of the new direction, the future changes for this band right here. This was the one that started the tide turning. What do you all think about that? Am I right? Am I wrong? I absolutely love this album now. And I do consider this now to be one of my favorites of all time. Never used to, I admit it. For me, it was always, give me Beatles 65, give me Beatles 6. And I still love those 2 albums, okay? I always will. Grew up with them. But this one now is a dark horse, so to speak. It has grown on me. It has gotten to the point that I look at this as a more mature Beatles album from those first 3. This is the one that they're really taking a step up. That cover art alone, if that doesn't set the tone for what you're about to hear and what's about to come in albums after this, I don't know what would. And I still think back to the old CD that came out in 1987. This was the first time, I think I bought one of my copies of this, the album, when I was overseas in the UK in the Air Force. Obviously being over in England for that long amount of time, I eventually discovered the UK albums and bought them. But it was so cool when we finally got the CD. Here's my original CD from back in 1987, mono only. The sound was shaky. Here's the upgraded mono version on CD, which came in the mono box set. And I also have the stereo CD as well. I just didn't pull that one out. But I happen to personally love both versions. I love the stereo version of this for what it is and the sound I get from that fullness of it. But I also love the gritty, rocking nature of the mono version of this. So I like both. It depends on my mood. I could listen to either one. No problem for me. So, folks, I just wanted to give some love to this album because, like I said, I don't know how all of you have felt about it over the years, or if you've loved it from day one, or took time to grow on you, or, at one point you were a little bit shaky on it, but now you've come around like me. But I absolutely love it now. I think this is a top-notch Beatles album. It's something to be reckoned with, and I absolutely adore Beatles For Sale. So I'm just here to share my love for it for a few minutes. I don't know, listening to it in the car today, I just said I got to talk to my friends about it. I got to share my love and get a little bit of enthusiasm for Beatles For Sale because I don't talk about it enough, and I just want to share my love for that album with you. Thanks again for being here. Just a quick, fun, little serious video. No crazy, silly Matt today. Just serious Beatles talk. And I'm happy you came along for the ride and enjoy. Take care, everybody. Love you all. Bye-bye.